Hello YouTube, welcome back to Assetto Corsa, and today we're going to be looking at the Toyota AE86, otherwise known as the Sprinter Trunio or the Toyota Corolla Levin, or basically it's a Corolla. It's a Corolla, but it's not a normal Corolla, it's one of those special Corollas, the Corollas that are very popular, very, those that you can tune. And of course the name is very special as well, the AE86. There may be another car that you may know with that 86 name, the GT86. I'll talk a little bit about that car and the relationship to this car probably later on in the video. This is going to be a short video. I haven't had much time to record this week, so I need to get something out for you guys. So we're just going to jump straight into the specs. 122 bhp in this version. There's 3 versions available. I'm going to be having a look at 2 as usual. I'm not going to have a look at the drift version. I did try it. Yeah, no. I prefer the GT86 for drifting. Anyway, 122 bhp at 6,500 rpm, 142 newton meters of torque at 5,200 rpm, which is not bad for a car of this age. And it only weighs 925 kilos, which means that 122 bhp does actually get you somewhere. It really does get you somewhere. 0 to 60 is 9.2 seconds. Now it's quite interesting because this actual car has a 0 to 60 that's very similar to the 0 to 60 on my car. So yeah, I don't exactly have a very powerful car. I have a little run around car, and it's also very similar to the 0 to 60 of cars like the Mitsubishi Eclipse. I think that has like an 8.9 second 0 to 60 time. So it's a very it's not that far off, even though considering its age, because it was made between, I don't know, 1983 and 1987 or something. I think it was made, 1983 is when they first made it, and then 1987 is when they discontinued it. But of course, to this day, this car is very, very popular, and I'll talk a bit about that as well if I get a chance later on. Inline 4, front engine, rear wheel drive, 1.5 cylinder, 1.5 litre engine. There were other variants of this engine. I think this is a dual overhead cam, but I think in America you guys couldn't get these particular engines. You had to get single overhead cams thanks to California emission rules and this, that and the other, and you had a 1.4 litre and less power and all that kind of stuff. I think 112 bhp as opposed to 122 bhp. I do feel sorry for you Americans at times, especially when it comes to these cars, because you never seem to get the best of the versions, which is I don't think that's fair. I think these cars deserve to be out all around the world. It's even in America. I mean, there are car enthusiasts in America, and I think they deserve to have these kind of cars. That's how it goes. But anyway, 123 miles an hour was its top speed, and like I said, it's a Toyota Corolla, but its namesake, or at least the 86 part, does follow on through history and is now available in the GT86 / Subaru BRZ, or for those of you in America, the BRZ, or the Scion FRS for those of you in America as well. Why you have a Scion, a Subaru and a Toyota, I'm not sure, but that's a different story for a different episode. The car itself is fairly nice, I suppose. Modeling's really, really great. I was very, very impressed with the modelling. And the texturing is great as well, with plenty of colours available. And I do like this whole 80s style where half the car is one colour, but the bottom half, so below the the bumpers, and then everything around that would be at that same level as the bumper, is a different colour. So you can see here, I've got this in blue, and then I've actually got the bottom part of it all in black. And you can see me sliding around as well, but I'll talk a bit about the sliding and crashing. Trust me, there's going to be crashing. I think there's a crash just about here coming up. There we go, doink, and that's just completely ruined everything. Anyway, sounds are very, very interesting. It sounds like a car that wants to be driven fast, and I like that. I really like that a lot. The engine sounds like it's being pushed, but it sounds like it just wants to keep going. And I do like that sounds, both the exhaust note from the exterior and the whole engine noise from the interior. The power delivery is really, really nice and smooth. I do like the smooth power delivery. I think when it gets to its maximum, about 6,500 RPM, it just drops off. Even then, it just drops off very smoothly as well. But all the way up to that, it's a very linear power band, which is very, very nice. Under braking, it does have a tendency to really lose the back end, which is exactly what I was doing. I mean, I started doing it on purpose, but that's exactly what was happening. It does have a tendency to lose that back end. and the suspension does feel a little too soft for the way the car is, but that's what gives the car its character, I suppose. And the car is really agile, a really agile, fun to drive car, I have to admit, and it has a lot of character, and I'm glad to say that that character has been brought over into the GT86. So you can see I'm coming up to the end of this lap, and this is going to be the only lap in this car. But the car, I have to admit, it's not the worst car in the pack. It's not the best car in the pack. I still think I have to give the best car in the pack over to that RX-7. But it's nice. It is a nice car, and for that I'm going to give it as I spin out again. Like I said, under braking it does lose it. It's a difficult car to drive sometimes, especially with the suspension. It is a difficult car to drive sometimes. But I think I'm going to give this car about an 8.5 out of 10, which I think is a similar rating to what we gave the tuned or the race version, the Mazda MX-5 Cup car. So I think it's a fairly decent car. It takes a bit of used to, driving, but it's well made. It feels good. It handles well. Force feedback's pretty nice on it. Everything looks good. Interior, exterior. It's got a working clock, always important. And like I said, you can slide it around. Once you get used to it, you can slide the car around. It's kind of nice. It's generally not too hard to control, and that's what makes it feel like the GT86 a lot. That is really what makes it feel like the GT86. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to the tuned version of this car now. Now the tuned version of this car, I have to admit, I didn't like. So I'm going to go through it, what's changed, and what I could see that's changed, and then what hasn't changed, and then why I didn't like it. And then maybe I'll talk a bit about the whole connection with the GT86. So, swapping over into that car, the AE86 tuned, 200 bhp now. So that's a massive increase. You're talking about 78 bhp increase on that. So they must have really tuned up a lot of things. And you've got 206 newton meters of torque. And these come in at higher RPMs now. I think the power is in at about 7,000. Again, it's fairly linear, but I think you get a fair feel of power up to 4,000, and then it starts flattening off just a little bit. But the torque is sort of all over the place, and that comes in at maximum at 4,100 RPM. But you get spikes all the way between, I think, 3.5 and 5,000. So you do feel the torque around that area, and it has about 25 kilos taken off its weight, so it is down to 900 kilograms, which isn't too bad. Does make the car definitely feel faster, does make the acceleration faster. I haven't got acceleration stats for it, but I'm actually saying that the acceleration, I felt it was around the 7.5 second mark. That's what it felt like. But I don't exactly know what the acceleration is, nor do I exactly know the top speed. But again, that being said, it didn't feel like it was generally any faster than the standard version of the car. It just feels like it's different to a standard version of the car. That's about it. So yeah, driving this car, well, again, the modeling is similarly great. I mean, it's got a new exhaust at the back. You see that it's actually got, I think it looks like a 2.5 inch single exhaust pipe that's replaced the standard exhaust on the AE86. So you would expect it to sound different. It doesn't. It doesn't actually sound that different. I thought it might have a little bit, but it doesn't, because I compared them side by side and it's virtually identical. So yeah, disappointing there. The other thing I was disappointed about was the interior. You've got a tuned car, do something to the interior, guys. I mean, it doesn't even look fancy, it doesn't look tuned. In many ways, this car is like a backward sleeper or an inside-out sleeper. And for those of you who don't know, a sleeper is a car that doesn't look, from aesthetics, doesn't look like, or at least from the outside, doesn't look like it's actually got any amount of power. Doesn't look like it's a fast car. Doesn't look like it's gonna give much out at all. But when you actually drive the car, it has unbelievable amounts of power and torque. And this sleeper term can be used for anything, whether you've got a machine, a laptop or a computer that doesn't look like it's got any power or anything, just looks bog standard basic, but it's got a lot under the bonnet, or something like that inside the motherboard and the processor and whatever. Same thing with this. Now this is like a inside out sleeper. From the inside, you don't know that it's got that much power. It's only when you look at it on the outside that you realize, okay, this car might actually have a fair amount of power. I didn't like that. I just did not like that. I think I want a car to look good on the inside, to show that it's got something. And this just did not have that. Again, agile car, very, very responsive, but under braking it has even more of a tendency to lose control, because it's, you know, it's lighter, it's, the suspension's not all that different, and it really feels fidgety. I did like the textures on the outside, I must admit. All the liveries are really, really nice. It kind of reminds me of this comic or anime called Initial D, and the character in there actually had Toyota AE86. That's kind of where this car comes into its own folklore. You know, it's with that comic, and it's also with the sporting success of this car. And there you go, I'm losing it again. With the sporting success of this car, it's a very good car. But this tune version, Kunos' particular tune version, I do not like. It's not all that to drive. It didn't feel different enough to the standard one. It just felt faster. It didn't feel like it was more tuned, more honed in. It didn't feel like it was more responsive in so many different ways. It just felt like it was a normal car that's just been, you know, someone's just thrown in a better engine and thrown in exhaust onto it. And the other thing is, it didn't even sound different. So yeah, it just made it harder to drive. I didn't like it. What was different about it was generally worse. I've got to give this car, I mean, for what it is, it's got to be probably a 7 out of 10, if that. I think 6.5, 7 out of 10, and that's me trying to be generous with the car. I really, really did not like this version. The other version's nice. I recommend you guys to drive the other version more. It's much nicer. The only thing that this one's really got going for it is the actual liveries, which you can always put onto the other version. So really, that's all it's got going for it. I didn't like this car. There has to be one car in a pack that I don't like at all, and this happens to be the one. So you know, nothing you can do about that. I mean, the rest of the pack seems to be okay. We've still got 2 cars to check, but the rest of the pack seems to be good. Now this car, what I do have to say though, which car do I prefer more? The AE86 or the GT86? And I'm gonna have to end with this. Normally I pick the older cars. I generally, you know, if someone told me what do you prefer, a Ferrari 458 or an F40, I go for the F40. If someone goes to me, what do you prefer, an Aventador or a Diablo, I go for a Diablo. You know, if someone goes to me, what do you prefer, a Mondeo or a Sierra, I go for a Sierra. What do I prefer, the AE86 or the GT86? I've got to go for the GT86. I feel it's a much better car, at least for me anyway. Thank you very much for watching. Please remember to hit the like button if you like this video. Subscribe to our channel for more videos on Assetto Corsa. Next week is the last part of the Japanese pack review. So it's going to be the Skyline and the 350Z. 350 or 370Z, one or the other. I hope to see you guys then.